Here we are, video number 5 already, and what I'll be up to in this video is starting to clean up the internal frame of the bus. So in the last video, all the panelling was removed. What I've got now is lots and lots of insulation and other bits of stuff that's just sort of stuck to the internal lining of the bus here. So what I'll do is basically grab a couple of the good old scrapers here. Got a little short one, which we used last time, and another one on a pole. And what I'll be doing is just going through, scrubbing all this stuff off, loosening it up and getting it out of the way. We'll then come along with some high pressure air. We'll blow all the stuff out of the channels here, come along with the vacuum cleaner, give everything a bit of a sweep up and clear it out. Once I've done that, I'm going to get in there and have a bit of a look, and I'm going to start checking all the welds to make sure that there's no cracks, and also just making sure there's no rust and any other nasties in there that we need to get rid of. What I may have to do is probably come in with the portable sandblaster and just blast down anything that I'm a little bit suspect on, or if there's any loose rust, what I want to do is actually get all of that off and prep it all up, make sure she's nice, come in, give it a bit of a spray with some gel spray, and then I'm going to come through with the deadener gun, and what we'll do is spray all this internals here with some good old bitumen there, and that'll make everything nice and watertight, soundproof, and all nice and sealed up. So anyway, I'm going to get into it. Alright, so I've given the bus a bit of a clean out now. I've blown all the junk out using a long air blower nozzle, and what I've got in here is a bit of surface rust, some scale and other bits and pieces. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fire up, got a portable sandblasting unit here, so I'm going to get the gun in there and I'm going to blast it with some garnet. Most of you guys will know what a sandblaster is, but for those who don't, it's a vessel that is filled up with this abrasive sand, and it's called garnet. Comes in different grits, using a 30 grit. And what I'll do now is take the garnet through this. It'll come out of this nozzle really, really fast, and it will just blow away any paint, rust, scale, all sorts of junk. So it's a pretty handy tool for this sort of application. On the downside, it's a messy job. So anyway, also the safety front, big thick gloves, and you need to have a full face mask. Just this stuff goes everywhere, and it's extremely painful when it hits you. So this is the scale and surface rust. It's not too bad, it's just on the surface, but what I want to do is make sure that I get rid of all of that, because obviously if I leave it there, it's just going to get worse over time, and I don't want to be revisiting this in a few years when we've got rust stains starting to appear on the outside of the bus. So we'll fire up the sandblaster now and see what sort of damage we can do to this rust, and see if we can get rid of it. Nice big clean up. So we can see here that the sandblaster has done an absolute cracker job of cleaning away all that scale and rust and whatnot. The brown stuff that you can actually see in there is just leftover garnet, which is the abrasive compound, which you can see is all over the bus floor. So I'm going to give that a bit of a sweep up. But if you just have a look at the difference between these two panels. So we've got this one here that I've just done, looking absolute ripper. And then this side here, this is not done yet. So that's essentially what the transformation is. So it's a really, really good way of cleaning up. So here we are at the very front of the bus on the left-hand side, and down in this channel here, after I've done my first sort of sandblast through, I've had a bit of a look, and under this rubber matting here, I've noticed that the rust here is just a little bit more significant. So what I'm going to do now is I've got a razor blade in and I've cut out all the rubber and lifted it up. Also just noticed through the panel of the bus here, you can probably just see a bit of a hole there where the panelling's had a bit of corrosion on it and gotten a bit thin, so the sandblaster's popped a little hole through there. We can fix it up with some epoxy, that's all right. But what I'm really needing to work on now is just getting this rust cleaned up. So what I'm going to do now is get the sandblaster in. I'm going to really concentrate hard on that spot there. I'm expecting I'll probably end up blowing this open a little bit more here. I'm not really worried about the panel, I'm more worried about the frame. The rust itself looks to be sort of surface, but if I don't get rid of it now, I would dare say that that's going to turn into a problem in years to come. So get this blasted out. Right, so you can see I've given this a blast with the sandblaster, and that took probably only about less than 1 minute, and you can see the huge difference. All the surface scale and rust has been completely removed, and that's now a good surface. So before I get in with the sandblaster on the driver's side, I've decided I'm going to start clearing off some of this rubber adhesive here. So to use this, I've got my trusty metal paint scraper here, and what I've done is I've cleaned the edge up, and I've hit it on a angle grinder or just a sanding pad, and I've made a nice sharp edge out of that. So so this makes it really good and easy just to get all this rubber off. I've now sandblasted all the channels out from down the bottom, and I'm kind of glad that's pretty much over and done with, because it's a warm day today, and wearing all the full face gear and the big heavy gloves and not being able to breathe too much with all this crap in the air, you know, I'm glad that's a job that's now finally out of the way. It's one of those things, it's not too bad for the first 5 minutes, but after about an hour or so it sort of starts to really suck. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is just get the air blower in. I'm going to blast all the crap, the garnet and everything out of the channel. So what I want to do now is have a good look and see if there's any rust or cracks or anything like that. So the sandblasting is going to have removed everything that's loose, gotten it out of the way. It's now going to let me have a really good proper look. So whack the glasses on now and give it a bit of a blast out, and we'll see how we went. So having a bit of look through these channels, they've come up really, really well. I'm quite happy with it. Just up here, there's a little bit of a spot that I want to revisit. It's just a bit that I think I may have just missed. Just up under there, I can see a tiny little bit of surface rust. And just also down here, this is where I had a bit of a leak. And I can now that I've got all this stuff out of the way, it's quite apparent. I can see where now within the vehicle the water's coming from. So I'm all set up in the bus now, and I'm going to start spraying out these panels, and particularly applying a lot of effort to make sure that the bottom sill here, especially down the bottom where you can see the difference in colour where the sandblaster's taken the rust out, I want to make sure I get a really good penetration of cold gel into these areas. So I've now finished spraying the cold gel right through all the frame of the bus, and I've applied particular attention to make sure I've gotten into all the nooks and crannies, especially the places where there were signs of rust earlier on that have now been removed with the sandblaster. So I'm going to let this surface just harden up a little bit, and in the meantime I'm going to start pulling all this roof insulation down, and I just want to start looking at the roof frames. Now I've removed all of the insulation from the cabin top of the bus, so what it's exposed now is the fiberglass roof lining, and also the steel frame. And one minor thing that I've noticed is that there was originally some adhesive here that was used to secure the fiberglass to the metalwork. So what I can see is that that has now gone brittle over time and it's no longer holding. So I'll come along and I'm just going to reseal and cork underneath where the lining meets the metalwork. Probably use some Sikaflex or some KD Bond or something like that. That's going to hold that down. The reason I want to pay attention to this is that if this roof is allowed to move, wherever there's movement, there is flexing. Where there's flexing, there's fatigue. Where there's fatigue, there's cracks. Where there's cracks, there's water egress, and then you end up with a bit of a problem. So it's probably only going to take me about 20 minutes to re-adhere that, and I'm also just going to clear off the old adhesive that was holding the original roof lining in. So what I'm doing here is I'm re-adhering the fiberglass roof liner of the bus back to the frame. So I'm using Worth Bond Seal. There's a whole bunch of other products you can use, KD Bond, there's a whole bunch of Sika products as well. I'm not going to use silicone, mostly because silicone just doesn't really like adhering to fiberglass very well. It does sort of separate over time, so I'm going for a proper bonding agent. So I'm just going to use my wedge. I'm just tapping that in just to give me a little bit of gap here, and then I'm just going to get this and cork it in. And on this side. I'm going to pull that wedge out. It's going to pop down. When that sets, it's going to be solid as a rock. My next task is to seal the internal surface of the roof and also the side panel frames. And to do that, I'm going to use a deadening gun, and that's what this thing is here. So what happens is inside this compartment, I place this bitumen emulsion. It's a tar sort of based substance, and it's water based. And what this does is at low pressure, it actually sprays this out. And when it hits the surface, it is extremely adhesive. It sticks to everything, and what it will do is, when it dries, it's flexible but still very, very hard and robust. It's got excellent soundproofing qualities. It is brilliant for waterproofing. So what I want to do is create a complete waterproof membrane on the internal surface of the bus, and then over the top of that waterproof membrane at a later date will be my insulation. So what this is now going to do is just shore everything up. It's going to seal every little nook and cranny, and basically make the entire bus completely waterproof now. So what I'll do is I'll set this up and give you guys a look at how we operate it. Okay, so I'm just going to load the deadening gun up. So what happens is this chamber here is filled up with the bitumen emulsion, and the air line connects to the base of the gun here. And what it does is there's a mixture feed, and it pressurises this chamber here. And what that does is forces the bitumen, which is a very, very gluggy substance, to spray out the end. So when it lands on the material surface, it spreads out quite nicely, but the trick is you just got to have your measurements set exactly right. It's not a spray gun like automotive paint, it's more of a heavy base gun for throwing the paint, or the bitumen I should say, onto the surface. If you don't have one of these guns, you could probably get away with one of those self-contained spray guns from your local hardware store, used to spraying fences and all that sort of stuff. But basically you can't use a conventional spray gun for this stuff. But it's well worthwhile putting this in your bus. It'll really make a big difference just regarding the waterproofness and sound deadening capabilities of the stuff. Make it really good. So anyway, there's no nice tidy way to put this in. You just scoop it out and you just keep scooping until this is filled up. When it gets to the top, she's ready to go. Okay, I've got some air. Now, on these guns too, you've got to lower the air pressure down to about 4 bar, so you wind the compressor right down. You don't need a lot of air to actually spray this out. When this first comes out, it's going to be a little bit chunky and whatnot, but I'll just got to work the water out when I cleaned the gun last time. as I'm spraying this, I'm applying particular attention to this tray down here, or the sill. So what I want to do is just make sure that I get a really good coating. Good thing about this stuff here, it just bulks on, so you can just really layer it up. The thicker you make it, it takes a bit longer to dry. I'm going to give this 2 coats, so I'm just going to give it a couple of medium-sized coats and or thicknesses, and it'll work from there. So that'll be a good density for me. I think that marks the end of a pretty good day. What's been achieved over the last couple of days, I now have all the lining repaired, resealed and surfaced. All the body deadeners applied, any rust has been removed, and now we're at a stage where we can start turning the corner and actually making things for the bus, which for us is going to be way more exciting than what we've been doing in the past few days. So anyway, tune in for video number 6, which will be starting to make bed frames and bulkhead walls. So a bit of fabrication coming up, fun times. So yesterday we applied to the internal surface of the bus a heavy layer of bitumen emulsion with the body deadening gun, and overnight it's hardened up really well. So what you can see here is the surface has now just become good and robust. It's nice and solid, and the fiberglass lining of the roof is now adhered properly and is reattached to the steel frame of the bus.